Dr.Night Echoes. One evening, around 9 p.m., I was in one of the other two buildings on site, a massive Victorian Gothic mansion. Most of the staff had stayed late for some community event or another. I had gone up to the second floor to grab some paperwork. The back left corner of the second floor had once been servants' quarters, but was now used as staff offices. The small 7-foot by 7-foot rooms that were once maids' quarters had become cramped, crowded offices for the grants manager and the community relations lady. As I was walking past the tiny, dark hallway that led to those tiny, dark offices, I heard a breathy exchange between two female voices, followed by laughter. I couldn't make out what they said, but the laughter afterward was clear as a bell. I figured my coworkers were up to something, or maybe trying to play a joke, so I started down the hallway toward the closed office door, the one behind which I could still hear the laughter. But as I reached for the doorknob, every hair on my arm stood up. In that moment, I realized with absolute certainty that I was the only person upstairs. I had just seen all my coworkers downstairs right before I came up the stairs. The laughter stopped abruptly, and I scurried away. This happened years ago when I was living with one of my exes. We'd gone to bed late after drinking too much wine while binge-watching some BBC show on Netflix. I must have heard something because I went from sound asleep to instantly awake, suddenly aware of a strange voice coming from somewhere inside our bedroom. My mind immediately jumped to, someone broke in and I'm about to be murdered. I lay there frozen, trying to decide if I should reach for the light or grab a decorative sword off the wall, when I realized the voice was coming from my ex lying beside me. But it wasn't her voice, and the words were complete gibberish. The voice was deeper and raspier than hers, almost like a man's, and whatever she was saying came out in a rhythm, as if it were an actual language, but the words were meaningless. I was so freaked out that I think I screamed her name like a little girl. She woke up confused at first, then insisted she had just been awake and talking to me a moment before, so I'm assuming she was dreaming. I wish to God I'd recorded it. It was straight out of a horror movie. She never talked in her sleep, never had any sleep disorders, and it never happened again for the rest of the time we were together. I was in Portland for work training 6 months back. Our group went drinking on the last night, and everyone headed in early except me. By the time I stumbled out of the last bar, it was around 3:30 in the morning. My phone was dead, the streets were empty, and the city felt colder than it had all week. I didn't know the area well, so I just walked, hoping I'd recognize something. Most blocks were lined with people sleeping under doorways or curled up beneath blankets. Portland nights are quiet in a way that makes every sound feel sharper. My footsteps felt too loud. I turned a corner and saw a bus stop with someone sitting there, an older woman bent forward, digging through her purse. She looked harmless, and in that moment I just needed a direction, any direction. I asked if she knew how to get back to my hotel. She spun around so fast I actually stepped back. Her teeth were the first thing I noticed, rotting, thin at the ends, almost pointed from decay. Her skin had that leathery look people get after years in the sun. Her hair was frizzy and white, sticking out in uneven clumps, but her eyes were what froze me. Pale blue, wide open, too wide. She screamed, not scared, not surprised. It was this sharp, cracking sound that sliced through the whole street. Then she started yelling in this frantic, breathless voice, "Don't go down that road back there. There's a man with a knife. He's not a good person. Don't go down there. "Don't go. He is bad." She got closer as she said it, staring right into my face, eyes unblinking, repeating the same lines like she was stuck in them. Her voice kept climbing, shaking, like she was trying to force the words into me. I didn't stay long enough to think. I turned and ran the opposite direction, heart hammering so hard my legs shook. When I finally looked back, maybe a block away, she was still there. Same posture, same scream, still pointing toward the road behind me like something was waiting there. I never figured out what she meant, and every so often, I still wonder if someone else went down that street after me. I checked myself into the psych wing 3 years ago. It was the middle of the night, and I was running on no sleep and whatever was left of my nerves. They took my things, asked their questions, and walked me to a temporary cot behind a thin, hanging sheet. You could hear every shift of weight, every breath from the people on either side. Most of them were unpredictable, which made the quiet feel worse. One guy stuck out the moment he came in. Tall, jittery, eyes wide like he was seeing something behind you instead of at you. His hair was pulled back too tight, and he kept smiling at nothing. Someone mentioned he'd gone on some kind of binge. Mushrooms, acid, Everclear, whatever else he could get down before the cops dragged him in. I knocked out fast after the nurse gave me a Valium, but sometime later I drifted back up. I opened my eyes just a little, expecting to see the ceiling. Instead, there was a shape blocking the light. For a second, I thought it was a doctor leaning over me. Then my vision cleared. It was him. His face was inches from mine, hanging there like he was studying me. Hair fanned out, eyes stretched wide and wet, mouth pulled into this full grin like he'd been waiting for me to wake up. I couldn't move. His hand lifted slowly toward my throat, fingers curled, shaking. But before he could touch me, 2 security guards slammed into him so hard, one of them fell with him. They dragged him back behind his sheet, and everything went quiet again. I thought that would be the bad part of the stay. The actual rooms were down the hall. Each had double doors with little glass windows. At night, they kept the lights low and the doors closed, and security walked loops around the square hallway. You'd hear the rhythm of it, the heavy boots, the pause, the turn. But there was something else, too. Right after the guard passed, I'd hear lighter steps. Not fast at first, just quick enough to be wrong. A shuffle, tiny taps on the floor, then another shuffle, closer to my door. The guard's boots would fade down the hall, and that softer sound would replace them, closing in. The second night, I made the mistake of looking. I lifted the sheet just enough to see the window. Nothing moved at first. Then 2 eyes appeared in the glass, level with mine, unblinking. The face behind them stayed in the dark, just the eyes, locked onto me like they weren't surprised I was watching back. They stayed there a full minute before sliding out of view. Then I heard a giggle, small, muffled, and a door clicking shut somewhere down the hall. I didn't sleep again until they discharged me. And even now, when I think back on it, I can still hear that second set of footsteps pacing the hallway, waiting for the boots to pass. I was 11 when my retina detached, but the part that still gets me didn't happen in the hospital. It happens every year after. The surgery was supposed to be simple. 7 hours isn't simple, but that's what my mom told me afterward. I only remember going under, feeling the warm rush through the IV, and then nothing. Then I remember waking up again to a blue light above me. Not the actual operating room, just the reflection in the metal frame of the monitor. I could see the doctors leaning over my face, their hands moving fast. I didn't feel pain, just the pressure of someone working on something they shouldn't have been able to touch. I didn't even understand what I was looking at. I just knew I wasn't supposed to be awake. Someone's hand pressed hard against my forehead, steadying me. I heard a voice say, "He's awake. Get another dose." No panic, just annoyance. Another person stepped in, syringe already in hand. I felt something cold move through my arm, and then everything slipped away. I thought that would be the end of it. But on the first anniversary of the surgery, I woke up screaming. I don't even remember the dream, just the sound of my own voice and how soaked my sheets were. Then it happened the next year, and the next. Same night, same hour. My body remembers something I can't control. The dreams became clearer over time. I'm not in a hospital anymore. I'm lying on a metal table in a room I've never seen. Dim light, low ceiling, no machines. I can't lift my head. My arms and legs are strapped down so tight, my hands go numb. I can hear breathing around me, but it isn't the calm kind you hear from medical staff. It's slower, closer, like whoever is standing near me is listening for something. I try to shout, but nothing comes out. I try to move, but the straps dig deeper. Then fingers tap along my forehead, searching for the right spot, the way a mechanic looks for a loose connection. Every year, it gets a little more vivid, a little more real. And last year, for the first time, the fingers didn't stop on my forehead. They slid down to my eye. We were out there early, cutting a fire access path through the woods near the river. Cape Cod has this quiet heaviness to it, but that morning felt normal. Cool air, chainsaw noise bouncing off the trees, 4 of us working in a slow circle, opening a turnaround space for the trucks. Nothing strange at all. I was dragging a pile of branches toward the chipper when something caught my eye near the river. About 150 feet away, just before the bank, a woman and a small kid were standing there. The kid looked maybe 5. Both of them wore deerskin clothing, the kind you see in museum displays. Their clothes weren't costumes or fake looking. They looked real, old, lived in. I stared long enough to be sure I wasn't mixing shadows. They were standing still, watching us. I turned to my supervisor and told him to look. The moment I turned back, they were gone. No movement, just gone. I tried to let it go, but something in my chest started sinking. It was this slow, crushing sadness that got heavier every minute. My hands were shaking on the next cut. By the time we stopped for break, I felt like I could cry for no reason at all. Nothing had ever hit me like that. I started telling the guys what I'd seen, and while I was mid-sentence, something bright lit up the treetops across the river. All 4 of us looked. A ball of light hovered above the canopy, maybe 300 feet away. It was huge. Bright yellow at the center, blue around the edges, like heat rolling off metal. It didn't flicker. It didn't act like anything natural. Then it started moving, slow at first, sliding along the tops of the trees from left to right, steady and deliberate. We didn't talk. We didn't breathe. It drifted off into the distance and blinked out like someone switched it off. A minute later, from the same direction, we heard 3 deep drum beats. Not echoing, not distant, sharp, heavy, close enough that all of us turned at the same time. We packed up fast. None of us said it, but we all felt it, like we'd stepped somewhere we weren't supposed to be. As we walked out of the clearing, this sudden wave of heat hit my back so hard I flinched. It felt like standing too close to a fire. It stayed there until the trees swallowed the path behind us. I used to have this recurring dream when I was a kid. I never thought much of it because it felt like one of those strange childhood dreams you forget about until something triggers it again. In the dream, I'd be standing behind this pizza place next to a river at night. No noise, just the sound of the water moving. I'd lean over the rail and see these huge whirlpools twisting in the dark. They were slow, almost lazy, but they felt alive. My dad would show up behind me and tell me not to get too close. He never yelled. He just sounded tired, like he was explaining something he knew I wouldn't understand. The dream always ended the same. Either I backed away, or the railing gave out and I slipped forward. I'd wake up right as the water closed over my head. I hadn't had that dream for years by the time I got to college. Then one night, my friends and I decided to grab pizza after a late class. Some random Godfather's near the edge of town. I didn't even look at the name when we pulled up. I just stepped out of the car, and everything in my body locked up at once. The smell of the river, the angle of the deck, the shape of the windows reflecting the water. It was the place from my dreams, down to the exact color of the railing. I didn't say anything at first. I just walked toward the back like I was being pulled there. The river was right behind the building, black and slow. The surface was flat, but when I stared at it long enough, I felt like I could see something turning underneath. Not fast enough to disturb the top, just enough to make it look thicker than normal water. My friends were still inside when this feeling hit me, something old pushing up through my memory. I suddenly remembered being here as a kid. I remembered leaning over the edge and how my dad grabbed my shirt so hard it stretched the collar. I remembered him whispering, "Don't look too long." Standing there now, I understood why. Even without the whirlpools, the water felt like it was waiting for me to make the same mistake twice. I was staying with my aunt and uncle for the summer, the kind of slow hill station days where nothing ever feels dangerous. I was 16, bored, and excited to use their old scooter for any excuse. That afternoon, my aunt asked me to ride into town and pick up a few things. I was already out the door before she finished the list. The road to town crossed a long, concrete bridge over the river. I'd taken it 100 times before. I did the errands, wandered a bit, and started heading back. That's when I saw John walking toward the bridge. He worked at my uncle's shop. Friendly guy, talkative, always had some joke ready. But that day, he barely looked at me when I pulled up beside him. His answers were short, quiet, like he was focusing on something else. After a few minutes, I asked if he was heading home. He said yes, so I told him to hop on. He didn't joke, didn't thank me, just climbed on the back. It was around 5:30 and getting dark fast. The lamps flickered on as I reached the bridge. The moment the tires hit the center of it, the air dropped to this brutal cold. Not normal cold, the kind that hits your bones so sharply you forget to breathe. My teeth were shaking so hard the handlebars trembled. And then, just as suddenly, the temperature went back to normal by the time I reached the far end. I turned my head to ask John if he'd felt it. He wasn't there. I stopped so fast, the tires skidded. I twisted around, expecting to see him on the road behind me, maybe hurt, maybe angry. There was nothing, just empty bridge, empty road, empty river below. I knew he couldn't have gotten off. Even if he'd tried, I would have felt the shift, the scooter pulling or wobbling. There was no sound of shoes hitting the pavement, no shout, no thud, just nothing. I drove home in this numb haze. I didn't tell my aunt. I barely slept. When my uncle came back later, I finally asked about John. He frowned and said no one had seen him for 2 days. He hadn't shown up at the shop. He hadn't gone home. 15 years later, he's still missing, and I still don't know who or what rode behind me across that bridge.